Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Noona's Noonchi podcast. I am so excited to have my famous TikTok Korean American mom, or I should say TikTok creator. But still, I want to say famous Korean American mom that I know of on TikTok. Just saying, it's cool to know you. Jane Park. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you.
I first met Jane, I want to say April, shortly after the Atlanta tragedy, when we were interviewed both for an LA news station about anti-Asian racism. So it was more serious terms that we met, but it was still nerve-wracking being
so nerve-wracking.
Yeah, live television for like 5 minutes, but or not even 2 minutes. But anyways, and then ever since then followed her closely and love her. I mean, yeah, sometimes your videos, I'm like, how do you do all that? We'll have to talk about that too, because then I look at K-dramas, which are very recorded, but yours is like so natural. So anyways, we're going to be doing some deep dives, some reaction videos to some of our favorite K-dramas. So welcome, Jane.
Thank you. This is so fun. Oh my goodness. I get to talk about Korean dramas with you.
I know. I'm so excited. Well, first of all, it's always fun to talk about it, especially with fellow Korean American mommy. But let's start off with your journey of K-dramas, because everybody has a different journey experience with how they got into K-dramas. So let's talk about how it all started for you and going down the rabbit hole.
Okay. So, I mean, it probably started when I was very young. So I remember my mom, my dad, my aunt, my grandma, just like sitting around and watching whatever the latest in K-drama was. Anytime we had a family gathering, or eating like fruit, like pear and apples, and then sitting in front of the TV. So, it was always a part of our lives, whether we were, visiting Korea or just, hanging out at our grandparents' house. And then I think when I myself started enjoying Korean dramas was when probably I was in middle school. And after school, I would go to my best friend Lisa's house, and she would have that black plastic bag of VHS tapes.
Yes. I still remember that.
Yep. And so it was like 인기가요, like, K-pop, right? Performances, and then like drama. So 별은 내 가슴에, that's probably like the first one that I remember distinctly. Just like fangirling, swooning over, and we were like 12, 13.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So what year was that? Like mid 90s?
Yeah, that was like 96, 97.
Yeah, I loved 별은 내 가슴에. So what is it in English? It's always like, I know it in Korean.
Star in My Heart or something?
Yes, The Star in My Heart.
So then it always was, as I'm sure you know, always was something like a commonality between among other Korean Americans. Probably when I was in grad school, I just, it was like that Hallyu movement, and it was this phenomenon that non-Koreans or people who non-Korean speaking Asians were watching K-dramas with subtitles. And I was like, oh, this is fun for you when you can't, like, wow, I didn't know that it would like translate, right, or transcend Korean culture. So then that was probably like a new era. And then like so much, what was probably the best thing about the newlywed days was just being able to binge and veg out with my husband.
Pre-kids.
Pre-kids, right? Then we could watch episode after episode. It was harder because it was before pre-Netflix,
you're right,
all of that. Yeah.
So VHSs or
bootleg, right? Just searching all Drama Fever or Drama Beans. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
No,
Drama Fever. I was so sad when it went, but then now obviously Netflix and all of them picked it up. But yes, I remember the Drama Fever. Wow. Yeah. Okay, so then, you started young. You were exposed to it fairly young, middle school. That's really neat when I hear about a middle school experience. So that said, okay, so let's talk about I don't know if you remember your middle school experience with it, but K-dramas and the way they portrayed the perfect looking girl and the guy. Do you feel like, how did it affect, I guess, that whole, middle school stage where, if I recall, I really struggled with my own identity and the way I looked. But did that affect you at
Yeah.
all? It might not have, but I was curious.
I mean, I think if it affected me the way it affected just like any middle schooler in their awkward years,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think in my mind I knew, oh, I could never, never aspire to looking like that, like Kim Hee-sun, right? Or Song Hye-kyo in Gaildonga. But
Yeah.
just I don't know. I guess it was just always that's why I liked that fantasy, right?
Mm.
Because I could kind of like transport myself to that world and imagine myself um in that girl's position, or you know.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of my own image, I always felt like super awkward and not cute
Which is,
until like
yeah.
I don't know, for a really long time, maybe like 6 years, elementary throughout middle school.
I think I relate to that. I never want to live those days again. But I was going to say, now you're on TikTok, right? And honestly, you seem so natural and you have millions of followers. So how does that translate? Just curious, like, how do you bring your, I guess, all the experiences as a Korean American translate into TikTok?
I think because it's always been who I am. I've never I guess kind of compartmentalized really my identity. And even when I was working, even when I was in spaces where I had to be more American or westernized, I always had that, and it was always a part of me, and I always like kind of owned it and was proud of it. So when I started making content, like mom content on TikTok, which was the kind of content and videos that really took off and made the account go viral, bringing in my culture was a natural part of it. So we would have like funny moments when my kids would like mishear a Korean word or phrase I'm trying to teach them, right? And I just thought, oh, this is great inspiration for a great material for a TikTok. I didn't ever think, oh, is this gonna translate well? It was just truthful to me. And I'm like, you know what? It's gonna find the audience.
Yeah.
And it did.
It did. Very authentic. Yeah. So whatever felt truthful to you, we put it, I love that.
Yeah. And people would ask like, well, why don't you speak, the best, because I'm going through this journey of trying to teach my kids, now like third generation Korean American kids to learn Korean and be in touch with that. But I have to be intentional with it. That's surprising for me because I grew up hearing Korean in the household. And so I'll hear or I'll see comments that say, well, you should have been bilingual from the start, or why don't you just use Korean in the home? And I'm like, yeah, I could have, but that just never was, that's just not what happened, So all I'm doing is just sharing a little bit of my journey, and that's okay.
That's interesting. Now, these are comments you get on TikTok?
Yeah.
From Koreans?
So that's interesting, right? Because I think there are, it was so funny because there were people who were absolutely convinced we were a Korean family from Korea living in America. And I guess it wasn't obvious that we were Korean American, like I was born and raised here. And then I have to be as intentional as another non-Korean speaking family to teach my kids another language.
Sure.
It doesn't come as naturally because my husband and I never used Korean among ourselves. Sure, we speak it when we're with our parents.
Right.
Or my in-laws, right? But that's, we've always lived out of state from our family. So it's just not something that our kids had exposure to. But yeah, it was just funny because on social media, you just see like this part of somebody. So then it's just, a recipe for all kinds of assumptions. So I just thought it was kind of funny. I was like, oh, am I actually like fooling people into thinking that we're, where we speak Korean and
Korean,
like Korea. Yeah. That's just funny to see awesome. Like the little thread.
Well, obviously what translated was the fact that maybe your love and passion for the culture. And and I get that too, that I get the Korean American experience, the Korean American mom experience from you too. I think it's great you're teaching your kids. I do regret that. It's not like we were against it. I think I was just too busy and just was like, but they have come back to me, just so you and I shared this with other moms, that because I have college kids now, they're like, yeah, why didn't you teach us Korean? I'm like, wow. So they also feel the same regret I did growing up that I lost my Korean. So I think that's interesting. So I'm trying to push them to watch K-dramas. Now, my kids do, but they're not as into it as me, except maybe my 7-year-old son who's watched a lot of K-dramas. But that said, how do the kids see you watching K-dramas?
They do. But gosh, like now maybe they were more G-rated when I was growing up, or our parents just didn't care.
Yeah, no, they were G-rated. They were just very like emotional, like dramatically emotional. You're right. I think they're more G-rated. You don't see them in bed.
Right. We
You know
don't
what I
see them in
mean?
bed. Like even
Yeah.
like Kaedonga,
Yes.
I watched that with my uncle and aunt. It was very G-rated, but
Very
very
G-rated.
like melodramatic,
Yeah,
right? So
that's the word. Mellow. You know, the
yes,
Korean word.
very
Yes.
mellow, right?
Mellow. Mellow.
So my sister and I were young, and we were just like sobbing my kids are a little young for that, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Right. So they're in elementary school, right? Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good point. But they do know you watch them and they know the experience. Because I know
They know
kids.
that it's our show, like we watch Korean shows. Yeah.
So speaking of which, okay, so your husband and you still watch shows, the
Oh yeah.
K-dramas together. Do
Yeah.
you always watch them together? Is it your thing, or do you sometimes like spread out?
It's like an unspoken rule that we have to watch it together. We cannot skip ahead. Yeah.
I love that. So I will relate to that. My husband and I are like that. In fact, I will share, I did watch a couple without him, like the really girly ones, like
Yeah.
Her Private Life. I just had to do it. I was like, I'm not going to wait for you.
Yeah.
And then
If
he
it's
ended up
something
not
that he's
finishing it.
not going to watch,
Yeah.
but
Right. Like,
typically we decide together what we're
that's
going to watch.
cool.
Yeah.
So then, okay. So share with me some of the ones you've watched together and really enjoyed and I guess impacted your marriage. Let's talk about that. You're watching K-drama couples.
Mm-hmm. We really liked, this was during the pandemic year, we watched an older one, Dear My Friends. And I think you posted about that. And that's one of my all-time favorites. Just about life, like the parent-child relationship, couples, right? Because you see older couples.
Yeah.
So many funny, so much funny commentary about like men and the women. Oh, and then love featuring marriage and divorce.
Okay, so I didn't see that one except a little bit of season 1. You like that one?
It was a very slow burn in season 1, and then season 2, it's like, oh, all the time we invested. Now we're getting the good stuff, and then season 3 is coming out. But it's interesting because it follows 3 couples, like one in their 30s, 40s, and then 50s.
Yes.
And then they all have different issues, but with kind of universal themes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Now, you're right. I stopped at season 1, episode 4, maybe episode 6. Like toward the end, and I was just like, this is because by then it was going downhill as in what they were all doing, the husbands at the time.
Yeah.
But as you're saying, season 2 kind of makes up for it. That's what I'm hearing too from people.
Yeah, because you kind of see all the plot lines develop finally. Because season 1, it was almost like nothing happened. It was just the whole buildup. Yeah. And then because they were counting on getting renewed, I think.
I gotcha.
So then at the end of season 2, we're like, oh, we have to wait for season 3 now. So that's getting more and more common, especially with, all these streaming services.
Okay, well, good to know. Then I'll give it a chance because you've mentioned that you're watching with your husband. It's about marriage and
I think you should watch it with your husband, like with your spouse for sure, because there's just so much good stuff there to talk about.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, because it's always good to talk about it. And so speaking of which, what do you learn from K-dramas? I mean, you just talked about how you discuss things with your husband.
Oh, well, okay. I learned that so this was Kim Ji-young, 1982. Did you watch that movie? I haven't watched the movie, but I read the book.
I haven't watched the movie. I know all about it, just haven't had time. Yeah.
So that theme of just, that male chauvinistic kind of world.
Yes.
As a mom, as a wife and mom in her mid-30s, like that just becomes so much more apparent to me in any kind of drama that I watch. And you watch like old dramas like Reply 1988, one of my also like all-time favorites, and just that women are just in that domestic space. Yeah. So we talk about that, and then we talk about how modern Korean society has kind of evolved from that. We talk about I think we learn a lot about communication And then just the
Like,
Korean
how so?
culture. Yeah.
Because that's interesting. K-dramas, Korean culture, teaching us about communicating.
About
'cause we're
communication.
Westernized.
Well, I think when you see where the relationship breakdowns are, like in Love featuring Marriage and Divorce, you know, and you learn so much about like their marriage is doomed. The viewer knows that, but the characters, they're just keeping up this image, right? That we're fine, you know, everything's fine.
She knows,
Yeah.
or the characters know something's
Yeah.
wrong, but keeping that image up. Gotcha.
Yep. There was one really interesting episode in season 2 of Love featuring Marriage and Divorce where the entire episode, my husband and I had to like scroll because we're like, no, hold on. The entire episode is like an argument. It's literally just like one scene is the entire episode. And so one of the relationships comes to like a climax, right? And they're deciding, do we split up or stay together? And it was so interesting to see kind of the things that I would say coming out of the mouth of like, you know, a written character, and just the way that women think and men think. And then, you know, add on top of that the layer of like in the Korean culture, like what's acceptable and stuff. So it's just, it feels extremely validating, I think, to me, to maybe both of us, to be able to see kind of our communication or like the gaps in our communication, like see it on screen and then be able to like, oh, okay, I see how ridiculous that is, right? Or yeah, see how he's gaslighting her? He's gaslighting her. You know, this is how I feel, you know?
But then your husband understands going, oh, that looks bad.
Yeah. Or
and showing some empathy.
Like, every time, like I do this a lot. You know, and he's like, what? Why are you looking at me? You know? And I'm like,
I love that. Yeah.
Like, you know, like jog your memory about anything.
That's
like
so funny. Yeah. Does he do that to you too at times, going, hey?
Yeah. We'll crack up. The funny thing, Jeannie, is that when we are not in a good place, we cannot enjoy K-dramas together.
I get that.
Because it's not enjoyable, you know?
No, because because actually I think that's interesting. We could break that down a little bit. Yeah, but when you're not in a good place, had an argument, whatever, mad, because it seems like your K-drama watching, which I want to say is similar to ours, is our bonding time, our quality time to connect. Even though we're not conversing, but you're learning a lot from each other and watching it. Yeah.
And it's quite interactive.
It is. So totally. Because and we crack up at the same scenes.
Yeah.
And you know, the slapstick comedy in Korean drama, sometimes it's like so funny. And then 5 minutes later you're crying.
Yes. Yeah.
You're like, that's so sad. No, that's awesome. I mean, I think it's so unique to hear about how it's kind of enveloped in your marriage. So then couple questions left. I guess the second to last question would be, what has K-dramas taught you about yourself, like your identity, or things that, like you said, validating in your marriage? But how about you, Jane Park, as the mom?
Oh my gosh,
as a woman,
as mom, I think I'm just, like sometimes if I don't stop to think about it, I just take it for granted. But like we're in a very living an exciting time, I think, to just see the appreciation, kind of what the things that we've always known, right? Is that, oh my goodness, like there's so much creativity in Koreans and Korean Americans, like they have so much to offer, and it's finally becoming known beyond just our culture and beyond our language. And so it just gives me like a really satisfied, happy feeling. And I don't know that it
like our culture is being appreciated.
It's like being appreciated
instead of being ridiculed. Well, some people were ridiculed growing up. Oh,
what's
that smell in your lunch? Now it's like, guess what? I'm eating kimchi fried rice and you guys are all jealous.
Exactly. So I think what's interesting is that I can kind of be fully myself. I can talk about it with my non-Korean friends, you know, like it's become kind of real, where I'm like, oh, what do you guys do to wind down? Well, you know, for us, the best thing is just after dinner and we put the kids to bed. It's just our quality time together. And then we watch our whatever Korean drama we're watching at that time. And it's great, So I think it's just made me feel more, I don't know, more of a whole person. And it really is inspiring too, just to see that talent. And then I think if we didn't watch dramas, it also would be, we'd also have less to talk about with our parents. Because I'm always like talking to my mom, like, okay, we need to debrief this scene, right? And she has different perspectives being like at her age,
Yes.
And so we talked about love featuring marriage and divorce.
She was watching it too.
Yes. Oh. And so it was just fun to bond over that. Like, I'm a mom too now, just like her, And
wow. So have you ever said to your mom, so remember that scene? Yeah, that's how I felt. Or I don't know, or that's what you did to me. I mean, that's a little bit rough around the edges, but
yeah.
Because parents
actually, yes, my sister has said that about scenes in 1988 because there's so much familial stuff.
Yes. Oh, are you a younger sister or older sister?
I'm an older sister.
I'm an older sister too.
Yeah.
Yeah. My sister actually, so now you get, okay, I'm gonna tell you something. My sister gave me the biggest insult. It was not a huge insult, but I was kind of insulted. She's like, yeah, you remind me of Pura. I was like,
yeah. Oh, my sister said that to me too.
I was like, I don't think I hit you. I don't think I went after it. She's like, yes, you did. You would pinch me. I was like, okay, that's different than trying to hit you. She's like, no, you'd come after me. And I was like, yeah, okay. I kind of remember you making me mad.
But how about the scene like when she's like stealing her sister's clothes? Right.
I will say my sister was, you mean Bora with, no, what's her name? Toksan. Yeah. I would say that wasn't our problem. It was more like, my parents did say that scene where Pora just freaked the whole family out. I think it was early on. Do you remember in episode 1 where everybody was quiet as they were eating dinner and it was just Pora going? I was like, yeah, I remember I did that a couple times. And my parents were like, ooh, our daughter, she's going, and I was like,
yeah.
But that's what my sister said. I'm like, that's kind of an insult. She's like, yeah, I'm just telling you, you were Pora.
Yeah. I think for my sister, it was very validating to see, kind of similar experiences on screen and know that it wasn't just her, or it wasn't just our family.
Yeah, it's just you too.
We have a younger brother too, so it was the same. It was like girl.
Oh, you really had that experience. Okay.
And then like the fried egg scene where she's like, oh well, Pora's like studying, she needs that, and then like, oh, like he needs the egg because he's like a son, or like he's the baby, and then she's like, Nana, Like, what about
that was
me?
a sad scene.
That was my sister. Yeah.
Even I related to that. I'm like, I hope I never do that to my kids. One of you guys will not get a fried egg today. But that was just sad. No, I'm so glad we're talking about this. That's awesome. Well, you kind of alluded to it, but I'd love to know, because this is, my angle on mental health and how I believe K-dramas can help us or teach us things about our own emotions. Tell me what is maybe a mental health lesson you'd like to share with folks that you've learned, or things that help you emotionally come to understand. Obviously you use it for self-care.
Yes. Mental health lessons I've learned from watching Korean dramas.
It could be one lesson, one key lesson. Yeah.
Well, I think we all need help in some form outside of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So I think we all need, we all want to be understood for who we are. And I think what I'm learning is that I know myself and what I'm feeling, and that's not somebody else's truth, right? Or that might not be the exact same perspective at all. It might be the opposite perspective. So I think, now that I'm getting older and, there's kind of more like deeper relationships or familial things that come up, I have to remind myself of that. In a drama, you get to see every character's, depending on the style of drama, but you see perspectives of like the same thing or same event through different characters.
I love that about K-dramas.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, that's not too far-fetched from real life.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. No, I love that. And then your all-time favorite. What's your well, if you had to pick one, I know that's so hard, but an all-time
if I had to pick one right now, it would probably be Reply 1988.
I can't
I've
argue
watched
that.
it
That's one
so
of my
many
favorites.
times. Yeah.
I've seen it too, and I saw it over Thanksgiving with my parents, and I'm seeing them fascinated. And I love just seeing that too, because that's an era they didn't get to live out.
Yes.
They were here in the States.
Yeah.
So that's so cool. Thank you so much, Jane. This was so enlightening. I loved hearing that angle on love featuring marriage and divorce. People have talked about how good season 2 was, but you just gave me and as a family therapist, I think I need to watch it.
Yes, please do. I would love to hear what you think about it.
I would. I'm definitely going to watch it. I'll binge it this Christmas. We'll talk about it.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, Jane, for joining us. It was awesome having you on Noona's Noonchi, and I will see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.